This weekend, the Fanatec GT2 European Series comes to Valencia. We are ready to go racing for the first of two 50-minute races of the day. In fact, both races take place on this Saturday. Qualifying done for both races yesterday. It is an 11-car grid, and we're getting towards the business end of the championship season because there is just one more doubleheader to go after this weekend. The teams will be at Paul Ricard in mid-October. The man on pole position is Elia Earhart, who shares with Michael Doppelmayr, and Elia Earhart very rapid indeed. But there isn't just, of course, the race to look at, there is the championship situation as well. Stefan Rossina is the man who leads it jointly with rivals Nicolas Salins and Stinas Longin. Now that's before you start to take drop scores into account, because you count only all but one of your points. In other words, your worst score you can drop, and for one or two people that gives them an advantage, of course, in the championship. But we'll worry about that in more detail when we get to Paul Ricard, because that is when we really do have to think about points. Stefan Rossina shares with Filip Sladecka, but Sladecka only joined him from the Red Bull meeting onwards, and that therefore means that, because naturally they're not on the same number of points, Filip Sladecka has no chance of winning the championship, but he does have a very good chance of winning races. As you look at Henri Hassid's car, Henri Hassid, who has been the man to beat in the AM category this season. Indeed, he even won outright in the first race at Imola back at the start of the season. So the grid is formed. 50 minutes of racing, mandatory pit stop, that pit window between 20 and 30 minutes. 81 seconds is the standard pit stop time, but then if you were in the top three last time out at Spa, then you cop 10 or 7 or 5 seconds worth of extra time in the pits. And if you are Filip Sladecka and Stefan Rossina, you've got another 5. Now, the reason for that is that the SRO Championship Board have had a look at the driver grading of Filip Sladecka, and his driver grading really shouldn't have been applicable, given that he's 39, not 40, to be a bronze. And so, to try to balance things out, a further 5 seconds have been added to that car. It's certainly not the end of the world, although you can imagine that the team would rather not have had that penalty. However, penalty they have got. Going to be interesting to see how that is overcome. Stefan Rattel, who is normally to be found sharing the Audi there with Luca Piri, not racing this weekend, and instead Stefano Costatini, who's a regular in GT World Challenge Europe. He will take the second seat alongside Luca Piri in the LP Racing Audi. David Addison trackside. Gemma Scott is down on the grid. Let's hear from Gemma before we go racing.
So this is clouding over at the moment. The weather's due to stay dry. It's a beautiful track ahead of us. You guys are starting car number 11 there on the second row. What's the objective?
Yeah, we're here to win. Obviously, for winning the championship, we have to beat the KTM. So yeah, it's going to be a tough race. The performance of both cars are good, and the driver pairs are also good. So it's going to be a hard race.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Stinas Longin, whose father Bert Longin you'll also find in the race. So we have 2 of these Audis operated by the same team. They're in almost identical colours, the PK Car Sport squad. 1 minute to go, engines now fire up. Bert Longin shares 81 with Peter Gulinks, and Stinas Longin shares with Nicolas Salins. So the grid, as I say, is now formed. Pole position to Elia Earhart, Michael Doppelmayr. They've had a class win together. Elia Earhart, when he was allowed to race solo under force majeure at the Red Bull Ring, won outright. He's a very quick driver in this company. Michael Doppelmayr doesn't match his pace, and so that car does rise and fall, and it's always interesting to see just how well Elia Earhart can go. So he's the man that starts on pole position, which for a rolling start here is on the right as you look. For a standing start, it's on the outside, which is the racing line. But Elia Earhart then on pole position, and it is going to be lining up with him at the front of the grid. Filip Sladecka, he will go first in the True Racing KTM. On the second row of the grid, Nicolas Salins lines up with Stefano Costatini for company as the cars get away. Peter Gulinks shares row 3 with Henri Hassid. Then you've got Kevin Wieder in the Brabham and Aurelius Rustica, both drivers to watch. Next up, ahead of Klaus Angerhofer, Chris Rosenberger and Leonardo Guarini to round out the grid. Let's just see what starts where in terms of the cars. It is Audi and KTM on the front row, Elia Earhart and Filip Sladecka. The start drivers, the second row of the grid, Nicolas Salen's Audi, and similar car in the hands of championship newcomer Stefano Costantini next up. Then you've got the Audi of Peter Gulinx, similar car of Henri Hassan lining up alongside, with on the fourth row of the grid, Kevin Wieder in that awesome sounding Brabham, and Aurelius Rustica, who with Michael Vergers as ever as the co-driver is really overdue a win and some good luck. Klaus Angerhofer and Chris Rosenberger in their True Racing KTMs are on the fifth row, and on the back of the grid is Leonardo Guarini. Who gets what in the pits? Well, there's 10 seconds of success plus the 5-second driver grading penalty for number 15. So Filip Sladecka and Stefan Rossina have got to try and overcome that, and that does give an advantage slightly to Nicolas Salens and Stinus Longin. They've only got 5 seconds in the pits. Henri Hassan, he's got 5 seconds. The Brabham, Kevin Wieder will start it. He has got 7 seconds of success penalty, and Leonardo Guarini 7 seconds at the back. The way the championship works also, to make the point, there is a Pro-Am and an Am class. So within the Pro-Ams, you've got some very quick pros and some not so quick Ams, but then there's the Am competition, and within that, there is also some great levels of experience on display. Henri Hassan, for example, has been racing for a long, long time. Started off in single-seaters, but has been a GT and sports car peddler for many, many seasons, so he uses that experience to very good effect. And as the cars now thread their way around this 14-turn circuit, they'll get themselves into formation very shortly. Peter Daly, the race director, as he is also for the British GT Championship, will, if he's happy with the start, release the field, will be in business, and then 50 minutes of racing, race 1 of 2 of the day here at the Valencia circuit, then to be underway. The Brabham, Kevin Wieder at the wheel of it, who's an experienced campaigner of sports prototypes in both the World Endurance and the Asian Le Mans Series, occasional historic racer, drove at the Monaco Grand Prix Historique this year, and one to watch that car, especially when Anders Fjordbach gets on board, because he is just dynamite fast against some of the others around him. The pace car as it is peels into the pit lane, the lights on the gantry are red, and when the lights change, the race will get underway as the cars accelerate down towards turn 1. Elliot Earhart on pole position, makes a good start then, gets the drop there on Filip Sladecka as they head down towards turn 1. We're trying to squeeze up the inside Klaus Angerhofer, number 17 KTM, but he's not going to be able to do it, I don't think, as late on the brake, diving into turn 1 at the end of that long, long pit straight goes Sladecka. 1 or 2 get run out wide in the background. I think that was Aurelius Rustica that was not given a hip and shoulder as such, but not really given much room. So his Audi drops back a little bit. Stefano Costantini runs out wide as well. Leonardo Guarini at the back in the sort of Rothmans colours tries to gain places on the inside line. So there's a real old sort out over the first few corners. KTM's get themselves together, and that, I'm afraid, being roughed up rather, was Klaus Angerhofer by Chris Rosenberger. His teammate got into the side of him, and it doesn't look as though Angerhofer has survived that very well, because the car does not pick up pace coming out of the corner. So dropping right to the very back, Klaus Angerhofer, he's in strife as the cars accelerate up through this opening lap of the race. So it's bad enough to be eliminated on the first lap, it's even worse when it's by your teammate. So Klaus Angerhofer and Hubert Trunkenpolz seemingly are not going to go a whole lot further, as the cars then now swoop out of turn 8 through the left-right sequence at 9 and 10, another looping right of 11, and then the short straight here up towards the Championeros corner. Drivers go way out wide, 2 wheels on the green, flick back for the apex for the corner, make the run through that right, and then up towards turn 13, which is a fast left-hander, and then a sharp left at the end of the lap, the Adrian Campos corner, after the late Spanish Grand Prix racer and team owner, and then up towards the timing line. Rustica way out wide there, coming off the last corner, and then tries to squeeze his way back onto the racetrack as they come over the timing line, right up alongside Chris Rosenberger as they go past the pits, but the KTM is going to have the advantage on the inside line. Yes, so back through goes Rosenberger, and out wide goes Rustica. He's missed the apex for the corner, goes way, way, way wide, all over the curves, back onto the circuit. And a big flash of the lights there from Filip Sladecka to say to Eli Earhart, come on, get on with it, I'm quicker than you, but he's not going to be able to just terrorise Earhart out of the way by flashing the lights, because Eli Earhart is a very accomplished driver. We've seen that with the win at the Red Bull Ring on his own, for example. We've seen it in the past when he's been racing in the ADAC GT Masters Championship, the German series, and former Polo star as well in the one-make Volkswagen Championship going back quite a few years. So Eli Earhart is an experienced driver, that is for sure, but he goes a little bit deep there, coming through turn 8. That brings back into the mix Filip Sladecka, another experienced driver, that is for sure, with history dating back through GT3 and single-seater ranks. So these two drivers nose to tail for the race lead. Fanatec GT2 European Series may not be huge on numbers, but it has given really good racing and really good entertainment all season, and there's more of it here. Out of the turn 9-10 sequence they come. Drop down towards the completion of another lap. This will put 2 in the book, and there you can see is Sladecka inching up onto the back of the Audi, which looked good in a straight line, but the KTM good through the corners here. So past the pits they come once again. Eli Earhart's advantage was 0.6 of a second. It's now 0.7. He's just done a slightly faster lap, therefore, than Sladecka behind him. Replay of the start. The incident later in the lap between the two KTMs has been noted, incidentally, by race control, but this was how it looked as they stormed down towards the first corner. Aurelius Rustica, the Lithuanian driver, on the outside line. No, he didn't get forced out. Again, he just arrived a bit too quick, I think, ran out of real estate and went wide onto the curb, and he did that a lap later as well. So that's why he was losing ground. There he is, over the curb. And then there was this real scrum going up through turn 2, the Duan curve. Rustica falling back behind Leonardo Guarini as he did so. But have a look at those two orange KTMs, because a big send up the inside there, looked by Chris Rosenberger, and as he got to the corner he found Klaus Angerhofer coming back onto his line. Contact made. Angerhofer has continued, albeit slowly, so I thought he was going to pit. He hasn't, but the car just going rather slowly, but still circulating. And now look for the race lead. Eli Earhart is getting away, so Eli Earhart pulling clear of Filip Sladecka. There is Kevin Wieder 5th in the Brabham. And he in turn has got Peter Gulinks and then Henri Hassan next behind him. So right now, Eli Earhart leading his class, so that's the overall leading car, which is also clear currently within the AM category. Eli Earhart is sort of allowed in that because of the pace of his co-driver, but we know that he is, and you can see it from the fact that he's the quickest man on the circuit, demonstrably faster. Over the timing line again comes Kevin Wieder then, and so he running 5th in the Brabham, the Brabham BT63 GT2, keeping those Audi R8s at bay. The Audi R8 GT2 avocation, and Peter Gulinks keeping Henri Hassan at bay. And then behind them, Chris Rosenberger is starting to come good, isn't he? So Chris Rosenberger inching up onto the back of them. The former rallyman, done quite a lot of both modern and historic rallying, and Chris Rosenberger presses on, sharing that car with Sedi Samini, who started it here with Stefan Rossina. So the KTMs have had a real switch of drivers over the year, real shuffle around as you look there at the Brabham of Kevin Wieder, which is falling away a bit now from Stefano Costantini because he's so busy defending, so he's dropping off the back of the traffic ahead. So out of turn 8, drop down the hill. This is 9 and 10. Flick through the left and then the right. But Kevin Wieder is pushing on as best he can, but there behind him is Peter Gulinks. Now, Henri Hassan here is significant, partly because he's struggling to get through the traffic, but because also he is 2nd in AM. So Hassan 7th overall, but the class leading AM car is the outright race leader. So while Henri Hassan here is stuck in the traffic, so Eli Earhart is building up a lead for Michael Doppelmayr into the 2nd stint of the race. Henri Hassan now is on his toes to try to find a way up through the traffic as he comes over the line. The LP racing car on the back of the PK Car Sport, similar Audi. Henri Hassan looks to the inside of Gulinks, who in turn looks to the inside of Wieder. No way through for the championship. Sladecka and Rossina are ahead of, for the moment, Salins and Longin. And they're 3 seconds to the good, and they've got to clear another 10 seconds, effectively, because they're going to stop for 15, whereas the Audi will only stop for 5. Wieder misses his apex slightly there, coming out of turn 4, short straight. This is 5 through the next left. And work your way up towards the Angel Nieto corner here. Another corner named after a great motorbike champion, the circuit named after Ricardo Tormo, motorcycle hero himself, and of course a very popular circuit for motorbike racing over the years. Closing up under braking, Peter Gulinx, who thinks about a go on the inside. The door was sort of half open for him by Kevin Wieder, but Gulinx was never going to get alongside in time, so still applying pressure. Kevin Wieder trying to keep the car in the mix, ready for Anders Fjord back in the second stint. So you'll expect many of the slower drivers to be in really early when that window opens. And right now, as the cars flash their way up towards the completion of lap number 5, Henri Hassad there is getting himself right back onto the tail look of Peter Gulinx as they now swing out of turn 13. This is the Adrian Campos corner. Gulinx is the wider of the 4 in the shot, and Kevin Wieder in the Brabham just tries to break clear in a straight line. We know the Brabham makes a great noise, comes thundering past the pits, and then down towards turn 1. Wieder again just slightly wider there, as we saw over at turn 4 on that previous lap. So Gulinx slightly the tidier, and actually this is a good test of Peter Gulinx, who's only in his second full season of racing, because he's trying to attack, he's trying to defend at the same time. He looks the quicker, runs it out wide there, look, coming out of turn 2 through the Duan curve, but had to get back onto the line to cover off any chance of a challenge from Henri Hassad as well. So the net result of that is that Kevin Wieder gets away. But again, you see how wider through corners the Brabham goes than does the Audi. Doesn't seem to be as neat and tidy on the way in, but it uses its power on the way out to consolidate any tiny error. So the race leader is still Eli Earhart. He's on lap 6. He's 2.5 seconds to the good as a gain. You see there, just as on the previous lap, Kevin Wieder invitingly leaves the door ajar for Peter Gulinx, but Peter not able to get up the inside because, again, the Brabham is good in a straight line. The Audi clawing back some of its time in the corners. So they're turning their way up now through turn 12. This fight for 5th place, race order. Earhart leads, Sladecka leads Salens. There they are, coming over the line. And 4th, first time out in GT2, is Stefano Costantini in the LP Racing white Audi you saw in the background. And then there's the gap, and then there's this fight for 5th as they come through. 10 minutes are done now. So we've had 1/5 distance completed. That means another 10 minutes before we need to think about the window, and that is significant because you'll do some driver shuffling in a number of cars, and if you put your faster driver in, then all could change, and the Brabham is one that's going to benefit, but equally the leading car is going to be affected as well, as Gulinx again sticks his nose up the inside of Kevin Wider's Brabham to no avail. Back onto the power now then as they sprint their way from turns 4 and 5 in a moment up towards the Angel Nieto corner. Road slightly climbing at this point. The KTM in the background is that of Chris Rosenberger, delayed early on when he tangled with Klaus Angerhofer, and he's doing his best to get back into the mix, but that KTM just not having quite the same pace as those 3 ahead. He was there earlier when they were squabbling and delaying each other. Now this fight's settled down a little bit, so he's been dropping off the back. Again, look, Gulinx late on the brakes, very, very, very nearly up alongside this time, and he is going to make the move, and he spins. Round he goes. Gulinx got down on the power too soon. Around he went into the gravel. He's got the momentum to get out of that, which is good news for all concerned. So Peter Gulinx goes around, rejoins just ahead of Leonardo Guarini, so he's down to 8th place. Could have been a whole lot worse, and that wasn't really down to contact, that was down to Gulinx being on the absolute edge of adhesion, and as he accelerated out of the corner, just the car broke traction, around it went, but a good recovery from Peter Gulinx, lost minimal time. But it has thrown him into this battle now with Leonardo Guarini and Aurelius Rustica. Rustica behind the Porsche, which is the sort of car he drove last year. But he dives to the inside line and goes through, coming into turn 14. Rustica goes by, goes wide. Guarini comes back at him. Aurelius Rustica tries to hop back onto the circuit, and the Porsche's got the run in a straight line. So in the old early 80s works colours, through goes Leonardo Guarini's Porsche, retakes the place. So 1 up and 1 back for Aurelius Rustica coming over the line. And a lively lap that turned out to be. So up now into 6th place comes Henri Hassad, up into 7th is Chris Rosenberger, down to 8th Peter Gulinx. And as far as the lap chart is concerned, no change between Leonardo Guarini and Aurelius Rustica, but we definitely saw it happen. Rustica through, ran wide, didn't get the power out of the corner as well as the Porsche did. So this is the Gulinx spin first of all, gets up the inside, and coming out of the corner tries to accelerate to get level. and the back broke away, so he was just a little bit too keen on the power. There it is. There was no contact, but it was millimetre close, wasn't it? And around he went, dropped a couple of wheels into the gravel, but was able to drive out the other side of it, and therefore no yellow flag required, no interruption to the race required. So that's the sister car, number 11, Nicholas Salens. Now he is 2.3 seconds back from Filip Sladecka, so he's going to jump ahead on the pit stops, and also, of course, on the pit stops, Stinus Longin, Bert Longin's son, and Bert will get into 81. He will get on board, will Stinus, number 11. Meantime, Kevin Wieder versus Henri Hassad. Now, Henri tries to do what Peter Gulinks couldn't do, which is to get past, and he's right there straight away onto the tail of the Brabham, and he needs, of course, to get himself up the order, because this matters as far as he is concerned in his quest to catch number 18 Audi, the overall leading car, and also the AM class leading car through they turn. So over the timing line, the gap between these two is only half a second. We're 6.5 minutes away from the window opening. Now remember that Henri Hassad is a soloist, so that car will go to the end at roughly the right sort of pace that it's doing now, barring any tyre drop-off. Whereas the Brabham, Kevin Wieder will give way to Anders Fjordbach, and Anders Fjordbach, we know, is a very, very quick driver indeed. He qualified fastest for race 2. And again, Wieder misses the apex slightly there, coming down through turn 4. That brings Henri Hassad right onto his tail. Again, he's up the curb going through 5, crawling all over the back of that Brabham. Up through turn 6 now, short run towards the kink at Curva de la Afición, and then down towards turn 8, which is here, where Henri Hassad makes a big dive, goes through, and Kevin Wieder had to give him racing room. Again, he seems to break a little bit early for the corner, left the door open, and Henri Hassad needs no second invitation, and he easily does what Peter Gulinks couldn't do in many a lap, straight through. So he's been chasing Wieder for half a lap, now he's ahead and will start to pull away. This could very well be significant in the outcome of the AM class battle, because now that he's been released, Henri Hassad's lap times are going to improve. Number 16 presses on, that's Chris Rosenberger in 7th place. Making his way then now down towards the end of the lap. This 4-kilometre long circuit, the Circuit Ricardo Tormo in Valencia. Of course, a part of the world that's had a permanent and a street circuit at the same time, but the street circuit that was used for Formula 1 now no more. But this permanent track, very popular for testing as well as for race weekends. And right now, Eli Earhart leads the way. Look further back in the queue. Sladecka is 2nd, Nicholas Salens is 3rd, and Stefano Costantini is in 4th place. This is Earhart, this is the leader. Now you can anticipate again that he will stay out for as long as he can within the window. I know we're not there yet, but he wants as much track time as he can get to try to build the advantage for his co-driver Michael Doppelmayr. Filip Sladecka will give this car over to Stefan Rossina. And remember, it's Stefan Rossina who is in the hunt for the championship. The two Slovakian drivers, they didn't start the year together. It was Stefan Rossina sharing with Sedi Samini, but they did the switch for the Red Bull Ring, and it's been a successful one. That's Nicholas Salens, again, championship contender, running 3rd, and Stefano Costantini here in 4th place. So the race leaders come once more over the timing line, and the lead gap continues to extend. It is waiting for it, 6.6 seconds. In fairness to Sladecka, he's doing his best to stay with Earhart. Eli Earhart has not gone disappearing into the distance. However, you can see the gap the leading 4 have built over Henri Hassad up into that 5th place now. Now again, thinking about the pit stops, Henri Hassad has an extra 5 seconds. Leonardo Gorini has an extra 7, but Gorini is behind him anyway, so Hassad is going to be good to take the battle to Michael Doppelmayr. Is that a KTM going through with the door slightly peeling open? Number 16, Chris Rosenberger. Have a look at the left-hand side of the car. Yes, the window is peeling open, isn't it? It's not the door as such, because that whole front bodywork section lifts and pushes forward, but the window is dislodging itself, which might just attract the attention of the scrutineers. So there, number 16, Chris Rosenberger, with the recovering Peter Gulinks behind. Peter Gulinks, of course, trying to get back into the mix after his earlier spin. but also, of course, now giving Bert Longin a bit of extra work to do in the second part of the race. Only 8th at the moment is Peter Gulinks. They've had a 3rd place at Imola, a 3rd place at the Red Bull Ring, a 3rd place at Misano. So the PK Car Sport entry closing up onto the air-conditioned KTM. Again, you saw how the driver's side window, the left-hand window, was flapping around. You can see it there again as through the corner it turns. So that may have to be sorted out on the pit stops. Hopefully, the ubiquitous sticky tape could do the job. But right now, Chris Rosenberger is feeling the pressure, and a 10-second time penalty added to the pit stop time of number 16. That, I'm imagining, will be for contact on the first lap against number 17 of Klaus Angerhofer, his teammate. So 10 extra seconds to be added to number 16 for that earlier incident. So we're a minute and a half or so away from the window opening. For the back markers, they're going to be able to pit at the end of this lap. A flying lap is 1 minute 35. And in fairness, it's only really the back markers that would want to come in early. So expect number 16 to drop down the pecking order as a consequence of this, as the field once again accelerates then here out of turns 9 and 10. That is the second placed car, still in the hands of Filip Sladecka. Stefano Costantini in 4th, and drivers now getting themselves ready to take over. So the pit lane will be busy for some teams early in the window. For others, they're going to leave it a bit later. Try and give as much time as they possibly can for the quick driver in the car, as Gulinks again here, coming out of turn 8, tries to make a move. This time it is against Chris Rosenberger. Can't do it there. Has a think about it going down towards turns 10 and 11 and gets up the inside. Goes through, forces Rosenberger out wide. Peter Gulinks stays on the circuit and goes through, claims the line heading now in towards turn 12, job done. So Peter Gulinks goes through, nicely done that, as he heads now up towards turn 13. Fighting back, trying to recover some of that lost time after his spin. So there, going over the timing line is Henri Hassad. 6 behind him is Kevin Wieder. And then more Audi versus KTM battling behind. And as there, the second drivers prepare themselves, we are almost at the point of the window opening. It is now. So the pit window ready to receive cars, and of course the pit in approach just on the exit of the last corner. So it's a very long pit straight, very long pit lane. And even those back markers in some cases weren't able to time the pit stop for that lap because they'd already had to go past the pit-in approach by the time the clock ticked over. But Aurelius Rustica is one that's early in for Michael Vergers to take over. The Dutch driver relays his co-driver. Aurelius Rustica and Michael Vergers drove the Porsche last year, Audi this year. They've moved to high-class racing as well, so a real switch. And that's the same team that operates the Brabham. It's interesting in this championship that teams have many a different car. They're not uniquely associated with just one brand. So, Rustica the first pit stopper, and the next one is going to be whom? It's going to be Nicolas Salens there, in for Stinus Longin. In the background, Stefano Costantini goes through to do another lap, up a place as a result of all of this. So down the pit road comes the Audi. Stinus Longin to take over number 11. Now remember, that's got a further 5 seconds to serve of success penalty time. And Stefano Costantini has had his last warning for track limit offences, so needs to be careful, as does Luca Piri in that car in the second stint. Nicolas Salens helps to strap in Stinus Longin. There's not much you can do in these pit stops other than check tyre pressures, adjust if needs be, but the really important thing is to time them absolutely right. Kevin Wieder comes in to give way to Anders Fjordbach, and that's Bert Longin about to relay Peter Gulinks. There is the leader. Eli Earhart staying out, of course, trying to build this gap. It's up to just under 9 seconds, in fact, now, over Filip Sladecka. And they're coming towards the midpoint of lap 14 is Eli Earhart, doing exactly what he is required to do, go as rapidly as he can in the LP Racing Audi to try and give Michael Doppelmayr the best chance of preserving an advantage into the second part. The worst thing in the world for Earhart in these races is a safety car in either stint. What he needs for his purposes is to get away, and in Doppelmayr's stint, a safety car is bad news because it brings everybody back into the mix as well. So he desperately needs clean, clear races as 81 then now gets set to go. Away goes Bert Longchamp, and after Peter Gulix's spin, there's work to be done there. That, heading into the pit lane, is the KTM of number 15, Filip Sladecka. So from second place, he now gives way to Stefan Rossina, and this, remember, is significant. This is a car fighting for the championship in Rossina's hands, at least, and they've got to serve an extra 15 seconds. 10 of success and 5 of driver grading, so it will fall away going into the second stint, but then Stefan Rossina, who's a very experienced driver, former Porsche Super Cup ace, he was third in the championship in 2009, for example. He's raced in lots of different GT categories. He will hustle on in that car, you can guarantee it. So for the moment, Stefano Costatini takes over the lead of Pro-Am, and this is the car leading the race and leading Am, and it is, of course, Eli Earhart at the wheel. So Stefan Rossina needs to get that bodywork closed properly. Slams shut, and it's good. So number 15 now should be ready to go when the team are happy, when the clock has ticked down. The car controller at the front looking at the stopwatch. They know what the drive time is to and from your pit, so they have to make sure that that plus the pit stop time, they know when to release that car so that it's a 10th over, not a 10th under on the regulation time on release. They're going through. Another lap done by Earhart. 15 laps completed now by the race leader, and of course on the pit stops he started to do lappery. There through is number 11, so that now is Stinus Longchamp, who gets himself ahead of championship rival Stefan Rossina because of the extra time spent in the pit lane. So Rossina's going to have to push now, and he will push, you can guarantee that. So the window is open for a further just under 5 minutes. Number 1, the Brabham, has used its joker because it was just slightly under the regulation pit stop time of 81 seconds. The Brabham also with the success time to factor onto that as well. So as there, Eli Earhart comes through. Rear wing wobbling as the Audi flicks through turns 9 and 10. There, Henri Hassan has come in again for LPE Racing, and that pit stop cycles through. Mechanic just checks the tyre pressures, adjusts if needs be, and the car controller studies his watch and will release Henri as soon as he's happy so to do. And he then chases after Eli Earhart in this Am battle. Earhart does another lap. Probably squeeze maybe 2 more out of this, we will see. Certainly 1, probably 2, but he wants to maximise the time behind the wheel of the car. Now we also need to keep an eye on a Stefan Rossina flying lap. His last one was out of the pit, so it was a slow one. Into the pits comes number 17, so that is the delayed Klaus Angerhofer, who now gives way to Hubert Trunkenpolz. Delayed, of course, because of that little skirmish that they had on the first lap. So Hubert Trunkenpolz, who came out of the Eastern European KTM crossbow battle, he will get on board that car. And their rejoining look is Henri Hassan, and he does rejoin ahead of number 81 of Bert Longchamp, so he's maintained track position then over number 81. And the Brabham of Anders Fjordbach is right there behind the pair of them, and Fjordbach goes to the outside line up at turn 3 to try to go all the way around the outside, gets run off the curbing, drops back in behind Bert Longchamp, can't do it then. So Anders Fjordbach, you can see straight away, is on a mission everywhere. There's half a gap. He's going to try and put that car to get through the Audis as quickly as possible, and equally Longchamp is on the attack as well. Fjordbach then in the Brabham, the third of these 3 cars, goes to the outside line. Bert Longchamp on the inside, tries to fend him off. The car snakes a little bit here, coming up through turn 6. But he does hang on to the place. Now Fjordbach goes to the inside, dives to the inside line into turn 8, out of the kink, and goes through. So 1 place pull back already for Anders Fjordbach. Next target is Henri Hassan. So everybody now, except for the top two, have made their pit stops. That means Earhart and Costantini have got to be in soon. Eli Earhart goes for one more lap. There, look, Henri Hassad is under attack from the charging reigning champion Anders Fjordbach. Won the title of Pro-Am last year with Mark Patterson. New car, new co-driver for this year. And the very, very experienced, very quick Anders Fjordbach goes then to shake slightly to the inside line there and unsettle if he can Henri Hassad heading out of turn 13, but to no avail. Over the timing line now they come, that gap just slightly wider than maybe Anders Fjordbach was hoping for, but as they hammer past the pits once again, the car there in the pit lane, Stefano Costantini to give way to Luca Piri, who saunters nonchalantly around the car. Luca Piri is the LP in all of these LP racing cars. Attempted to come and have a go in the championship last year by his Italian neighbour, one Stefan Rattal. And they've shared cars on many an occasion, but this weekend Stefan electing to look after the administration of all of his championships and the event rather than split his time between that and racing. So Stefano Costantini comes to have a go instead. And another driver, if you like, introduced to the joys of GT2. Lots of people have come and had a look and are thinking about committing for next season, which is good to hear. So the pit window will be closing shortly. And that means that Eli Earhart has got to be in this time, as again the Brabham there gets right up onto the tail of Henri Hassad coming down to turn 8. It looks a tricky corner, doesn't it, given the number of times we've seen drivers away from an apex or even having a spin coming out of it. But Henri Hassad there covering off Anders Fjordbach. Now towards turn 11 they come. And that's the leader down the pit road. So it's going to be really interesting now to see what size of advantage Earhart is going to be able to give to Doppelmayr relative to Henri Hassad. So as he comes into the pit lane, and of course the gap's going to be reduced anyway because they've been slow down the pit lane after the timing line was crossed. Eli Earhart will give way now then to Michael Doppelmayr, the bronze-graded Austrian. Another LP racing car. So Earhart gets out, sorts out the seat. Michael Doppelmayr folds himself into the car. So these cars that you're looking at unlap themselves. They go back onto the lead lap, and it is still, with 20 minutes to go, Henri Hassad ahead here. Look at Anders Fjordbach. Really good defence this by Henri to keep the Brabham behind him. And then you've got Bert Longchamp behind as well, looking to try to find a way back ahead of the Brabham. Good defence by Hassad because he has not fallen away despite all the pressure being applied. And this, of course, is bad news as far as Anders Fjordbach is concerned, because he can't make his way through the traffic, and that means he's not closing on anybody. But now he does get through the traffic. He dives on the inside line at turn 6. And although Hassad tried to get the switch back on the inside line, it was to no avail. So now Fjordbach goes through. That puts him up into 5th place overall. Puts him up to 4th in class as well. And Michael Doppelmayr is about to make his way out of the pit lane. He blasts away. And so now Eli Earhart just has to stand and look at a screen for 19.5 minutes and hope that nobody gets close. So the leader goes through, and the margin there, you can see it, over Stinus Longchamp when they came into the pit lane was 97 seconds and a spin for Hubert Trunkenpolz. Looks like he's quite a long way off the circuit there on one of the access roads as the cars stream past. So the yellow flags are out. How he's got there remains for the moment something of a mystery, but he's trying to rejoin. But yes, a margin of 97 seconds is massively reduced, of course, because that included the pit stop. And oh, more hip and shoulder between KTMs, and again it's 17 that comes off worse. So earlier on in the race it was Klaus Angerhofer, now it's Hubert Trunkenpolz nerfed out of the way. Might be a rather quiet lunch between the KTM drivers at this rate. I don't think there's going to be a lot of joy on the part of 17 against 16. Sedi Sarmini at the wheel that time. So right here is, now that the Brabham has gone by, the Audi fight, Henri Hassad versus Bert Longchamp. This is Am versus Pro-Am entry, so although they're fighting on track, they're not fighting for position in class. Anders Fjordbach's on his last warning about track limit offences as well. So although we're looking at him making his way up through the field, he needs to stay the right side of the race officials. So this is Doppelmayr. He's up towards the line. Now we are going to see what this margin is, and it's not a big one, is it? Over a charging Stinus Longchamp. So all that hard work of Eli Earhart without being rude to Michael Doppelmayr, can rapidly be undone, even on an outlap, because Michael is just not as fast as others around him. That said, they're after a class win, not an outright win, so as long as he stays ahead of Hassad for 17.5 minutes, then that's the key. So Stinus Longchamp leads in Pro-Am, comes up now through turn 2 out of Douan. Looking a bit more overcast ahead, but the lead gap is coming down and down and down, and I would offer you that we're going to have a new leader by the end of the lap. So as the field turns through, there you've got the gap to about a length, and on the run now out of turn 6, there's enough lap to go for Longchamp to easily breeze on by. So that puts him now as the outright race leader as well as the Pro-Am leader, but this now becomes the concern for LP Racing to see how much time Doppelmayr is going to lose to Henri Hassad, who has now fallen back, look, behind Bert Longchamp. So Bert Longchamp moves through, takes over 6th place, but Hassad's focus is Doppelmayr. So we haven't yet got a flying lap out of Michael. He's on his first flying lap, as in not out of the pits. So at the end of it, we can compare what he is up to relative to Hassad, and therefore the gap, 16.5 minutes to go, which is still probably enough of the race for the chasing Henri Hassad to be able to catch Doppelmayr before the end, but we will see. So the race leaders go through, and as there, the PK Car Sport entry of Stinus Longchamp, clear of Michael Doppelmayr. Michael Doppelmayr's first flying lap is a 1:44, and Henri Hassad is doing 1:37. So yes, Hassad for a class win is a real possibility here. We'll see what the gap is. There is coming out of turn 14, Anders Fjord back behind him is Bert Longchamp, behind him is Henri Hassad, and there's a fair amount of ground to make up, in fairness, for Henri Hassad. But can Doppelmayr survive? Let's see. Out of turn 1, they all turn. Michael Vergers presses on in the background in 8th place. Great little battle pack here now. This is for 2nd, and through on the inside goes Luca Piri. Doppelmayr forced out wide, so Piri will go through, Stefan Rossina will go through, that's 2nd and 3rd, but it's all Pro-Am cars there going ahead of the Am. So Doppelmayr, yes, losing places overall, but keeping his class lead, which is the key to all of this. 15 minutes to go. Game on for 2nd place as well, because don't forget, Rossina needs as many points out of this as he can get. So he needs to get past Luca Piri, and he has a big dive on the inside line there, and he goes through. So up into 2nd place goes Stefan Rossina. And there's a drive-through penalty for Anders Fjord back for exceeding track limits. I mentioned he was on his last warning. The warning was not heeded, and so there, the local officials have the board. It'll be on the screens as well. It'll be communicated to the teams that number 1 has this drive-through penalty to serve. So the race leader currently is on lap 22, 14.5 minutes to go. So Stinus Longchamp leads now up into 2nd place. Stefan Rossina, that gap is 9.2 seconds. Last time Rossina lapped slower, but in fairness, he did have traffic to negotiate. Replay here of a bit of a wobble by Luca Piri, and that is what brought right onto his tail the charging Stefan Rossina, and he made the dive against Piri. That was a good pass. Very opportunistic, totally committed, and through he went. That's Anders Fjord back serving his drive-through then. This walk of shame past the pits and under the grandstands. So down the pit road he goes. And in a moment, we'll accelerate back onto the circuit. But as a legacy of that, falls down the order again. So Longchamp Jr. leads Rossina, leads Costantini, leads Doppelmayr, Longchamp Senior. And then Hassad is going to be back into the top 6. So Stinus Longchamp leads the way, and significantly here, outscoring Stefan Rossina. So this is good to give a championship advantage heading into the 2nd race of the day, which will be on track later on this afternoon. So there is Longchamp heading now through over the line, and that now puts 22 laps in the book. So those three drivers, remember, Longin, Salins and Rossina, all tying on points before you take drop scores into account coming into this race. So this will give the advantage back to the Audi drivers. You can anticipate as well more grumbling from the Ryder team saying that were it not for that extra 5 seconds in the pits, they'd have been in the hunt. But right now the gap is 9.7, so they would still be behind, even allowing for that penalty. So there is the charging Stefan Rossina, and he's getting a drive through for causing a collision. So it was that KTM that got involved with Hubert Trunkenpolz. We saw it earlier, it wasn't Sedi Sarmini, it was Stefan Rossina, and so a drive through penalty for causing a collision, say the stewards. And that is further bad news, because a drive through could be worse, I'll grant you, but with the length of the pit lane, it's a very, very slow, lengthy drive through. And this was the move again. Bang, up the inside. So that was Rossina, totally committed. Trunkenpolz was there, contact made, Trunkenpolz off the road, and so Hubert Trunkenpolz from the AM, given a hip and shoulder by a Pro-Am car, and that always rather points the finger at the more experienced driver, the higher graded driver, and so it is Rossina who will cop the penalty with 11 minutes on the clock. And he comes, so the team take this on the chin as they have to. And that means that Costantini goes back up into second place. Now, how's Doppelmayr doing for his class lead? Well, he's being caught, certainly, by Henri Hassad in terms of a gap. So through now goes Michael Doppelmayr. That's his Audi you can see coming towards you. Look down the pit lane, where is the KTM? There it is. So Doppelmayr goes through, then Bert Longin goes through. There's Henri Hassad, then Michael Vergers behind him. And so Rossina will now drop into 7th place as a result of that drive-through. Now, Doppelmayr to Hassad is 8 seconds. And Henri Hassad's last lap was a 1:37 and Michael Doppelmayr a 1:43. So I still think with 10 minutes to go, Henri Hassad is going to catch him for the class win before the end of the race. This is the battle between now Longin and Doppelmayr, and Bert Longin goes through on the inside for 4th overall. Job done. Different classes, of course, so it doesn't really affect what they're scoring, but it does change the race order. Bert Longin goes through on the run into turn 8, up the inside place gain. Good move. So there, the PK Car Sport Audi swings out of turn 11, back onto the power. 9.5 minutes on the clock as the race draws closer to the end, but still some battles to be resolved, and significantly, remember, we have got this AM class up for grabs. Race leaders come through once again. Longin to Costantini, which is really Piri. The timing screen has him as Costantini on a transponder glitch. There you've got Doppelmayr under attack, so all of a sudden, look at that, 8 seconds gone in a lap. Now for the class lead. Henri Hassad is trying to fend off Vergers, but he's about to make a move. Is he on the inside line? And yes, Henri Hassad goes through, takes the AM class lead away from Michael Doppelmayr, who gets run out wide. Vergers goes through, Rossina goes through as well. 8 3/4 minutes on the clock. So another place gained by Vergers, another place regained by Rossina. And Michael Vergers presses on as he comes now up towards turn 6. But the significance out of all of that is that we have a new AM leader. Henri Hassad has done it. He's taken 4 wins in the class anyway this year, and a 5th beckons. Into that little S of turns 9 and 10, they flick. And there, the KTM of Stefan Rossina now having a go to try to get onto the back of Michael Vergers. So the Audi hanging on to position for the moment, but there behind you can see the KTM flick over the curb. Henri Hassad, in theory, ought to be caught and passed by Vergas, given Michael's experience, but the Dutch driver not quite yet on the tail. Down to turn 14 they come. Henri Hassad then now with the class advantage. Comes over the timing line. Eli Earhart has done the fastest lap of the race, incidentally. Set very early on, but again now just has to sit and watch all that hard work. Sadly, come to naught. So Henri Hassad goes through. Vergas tucked up behind him. Get back onto the power and sprint their way now up over the curb. Hard on the brakes. Henri Hassad using all of his experience to keep Michael Vergas at bay, but equally, Michael has been around the block a few times, and as they come now out of turn 5, get the apex ready for this left-hander of turn 6. Vergas attacking and defending all the time. 6 3/4 minutes to go now. Down they head again into that left-hander out of turn 8. Get back onto the power, drag the car out the other side of the corner and press on now. Contact made as Rossina tries to force his way up the inside of Vergas there. Didn't dislodge the Audi. And Henri Hassad and Michael Vergas are both now on their last warning for track limit offences. So Henri Hassad's class win that's on the cards here, he needs to be careful. Vergas under attack again from Rossina. Audi KTM with 6 minutes to go as they come out of turn 14. And number 11, the leader's pit stop, is going to be investigated after the race. Now, what is all this about? The race leading car is going to be looked at post-race. Did 68.8 seconds, sorry, 88.8 seconds, which might be just too close to the wire for regulations. The alternative is that too many people touch the car during the pit stop. So, number 11, Audi, leads on the road, but its pit stop is being investigated after the race. So the plot thickens. Stinus Longchamp comes through. So the race leaders once again head over the timing line. So I think the pit stop time is okay for Longchamp, so it must be a personnel or a speeding issue. Personnel is where I'm leaning towards for want of confirmation. Luca Piri comes through then in second place. Now Luca Piri's last lap, again, slightly slower than Stinus Longchamp, 15 seconds behind, so he's dropping away. That said, Luca Piri is still on target for his best finish of the season here with a second place. But Longchamp goes through in third. Longchamp dropping away also from the top two. Here's the battle pack for fourth. Henri Hassad, Michael Vergas, Stefan Rossina, 4th, 5th, 6th. They dive down at turn 1. Henri Hassad, in a way, could afford to let these two go. I know he's a racer. I know he wants to finish as high as he can, but what he does not want to do is get involved in a battle that might cause him dramas and lose his class lead. So for points for the championship, he might be advised just to let the traffic go. Michael Vergas, of course, on the attack and on the defensive all the time here. He turns his way now up towards turn 6. And we understand that Michael Vergas is about to be issued with a drive-through for track limit offences. So the British GT Championships Driving Standards Advisor is about to cop, we understand, a drive-through penalty for track limits. Now that's not yet come up on the timing screen. On the timing screen, he's still on his last warning, but from race control, there is the TV graphic. That'll be communicated to the teams as well on the app that they all use to send messages to and from race control. So Vergas will drop out of this little battle pack. Aurelius Rustiger will not be amused, and it's not the first time this year that it's been happening to Michael Vergas. Misano, he got done for it. And there, Rossina dives to the inside line, goes through. Is that because Vergas is diving for the pit lane? It is. So Michael gets the message, comes in. So he didn't put up much of a fight, didn't need to. So Michael Vergas into the pit road, serves the drive-through, of which there have been quite a lot in this race. And that's what, our third drive-through for track limit offences, all causing a collision. Now the race leader is still Stinus Longchamp, and he's going to get one more lap out of the race at the end of the one he's on now. The KTM of Stefan Rossina then now 5th, up behind Henri Hassad, who is well clear in class, the AM category, the LP Racing Audi turning its way once again towards us. So it is Audi versus KTM on track. 4th and 5th they run, but of course they're in different classes. So this means that it's a fight for overall honours rather than for points. So the race leaders, with 1 minute and 42 seconds to go, edge their way towards a checkered flag, and those race leaders are Stinus Longchamp and Nicolas Salins, as Rossina again does his big dive at the inside at turn 11, and he goes through. So Rossina back up into 4th place, remember, having had to serve a drive-through earlier on for that contact. Now, is he going to be able to get onto terms with Bert Longchamp before the end? 4.7 seconds up the road was Bert Longchamp. It's a big ask, but he's going to have a go. He'll bring the gap down, certainly, but I don't think he's going to catch. So over the timing line once more goes Bert Longchamp. There behind him, look, he's the charging Stefan Rossina. And the margin between the two of them as they go onto the last lap, 4.4 seconds. Yeah, it's too big a gap, that, because only 9/10 quicker is Rossina than Longchamp. So he's going to be closer, but not close enough to have a go by the end of the lap. So there, you've got the race leading Audi, but remember there is this pit stop investigation post-race, so it could all unravel. Hopefully it won't, but there is that to factor into the mix. Out of that little S comes Stinus Longchamp, and he is heading, of course, for a race win, and in so doing he's going to put himself back into the lead of the championship here. It's going to be a 3rd victory of the season. One came at Imola, and he's got another lap to go, because for the sake of, what, 3 seconds, he could have backed off and taken that, but instead he came hammering over the timing line and has to go around again. So you certainly get value for money for your 50 minutes. It's going to be very nearly 52 minutes by the end of it. Through goes Luca Peri for 2nd place. Yeah, Imola and Misano, the venues at which Nicolas Salins and Stinus Longchamp have been victorious this year. But yes, he was about 3 seconds the wrong side there of a checkered flag. The team, I would have thought, could have shouted, lift, 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 with a 14-second cushion. Instead, onto another lap goes Stinus Longchamp, and now has to be completely error-free to make sure this is win number 3 of the season. Luca Piri 2nd, Bert Longchamp 3rd, Stefan Rossina 4th, Henri Hassad 5th, Anders Fjordbach 6th, the Brabham back ahead of Michael Vergas Audi now. So there, Stinus Longchamp comes out of turn 10 and 11, onto the power, another short straight up towards the Champions corner. And the road climbs a little at this point, up towards turn 13, drop back down the other side of the brow. 1 corner to go. This time there will be a checkered flag, and there will be win number 3 for the Audi number 11 of Stinus Longchamp and Nicolas Salins, and that puts them back into the lead of the Fanatec GT2 European Series. Stinus Longchamp, Nicolas Salins win at Valencia. 2nd is going to go the way of Luca Piri and Stefano Costantini, some way back. Luca Piri brings the car up towards the line behind the lapped Porsche of Leonardo Gorini, the lapped KTM of Sedi Samini, and there Luca Piri gets his best result of the season in 2nd place with Stefano Costantini. And then for 3rd, it's going to be Bert Longchamp. So dad and lad on the podium, Bert Longchamp and Peter Gulings. This is Anders Fjordbach, still running 6th in the Brabham as it booms its way up towards the last corners. And there, Oriha is going to take a 5th win of the year in AM from Michael Doppelmayr, with Leonardo Guarini a lap down already home. So they come pouring over the timing line. There is Anders Fjordbach 6th with his drive-through in this race. He'll start the second one from pole position, but a really good drive that by Stinus Longin and Nicolas Salins. However, there is, as I was saying, this pit stop is going to be investigated after the race. So when we get to race 2, a little bit later on, that's going to get underway at 5:20 local time. We'll bring you more news, if there is any, about any penalties, anything that's unravelled life for the PK car sport drivers. But Stinus Longin and Nicolas Salins are the winners then, from Luca Piri and Stefano Costatini in 2nd place. And then another 3rd place for Bert Longin and Peter Gulinks, with Henri Hassad taking the AM class honours. Let's look at the overall result. It was Audi 1, 2, 3 with Nicolas Salins and Stinus Longin the winners, ahead of Luca Piri and Stefano Costantini, and then Peter Gulinks and Bert Longin taking 3rd. After a drive-through, Philip Strzelecka and Stefan Rossina 4th. A class win 5th for Henri Hassad, ahead of Kevin Wieder and Anders Fjordbach. They got a drive-through, as did 7th Aurelius Rustiger and Michael Vergers. 8th, a car that dominated stint 1, the Audi of Eli Earhart and Michael Doppelmayr, with Leonardo Guarini a lap down in 9th. 10th was the delayed KTM of Chris Rosenberger and Sedi Sarmini, and we lost with damage the Hubert Trunkenpoltz car that he was sharing with Klaus Angerhofer. So the drivers for the 2 podium ceremonies make their way down to the Parc Ferme area. The drivers bringing the cars in, going offline there to try and get some pickup, help with the weight of the car, help with the ride height of the car, and then make their way down the pit lane to that Parc Ferme area. So the Audi stop. And there is the winning car for PK Car Sport, a 1-3 for the team. And a very, very happy Nicolas Salins can celebrate. Big, big cheer, because not only is it a win, it also puts them back into the lead of the championship. Out gets a delighted Stinus Longin, to applause from the team and his co-driver. And tries not to clang the door against the sister car of his father, because Bert Longin will be there as well. But Stinus Longin, who's adapted to these cars very effectively, very quick driver, came out of the Euro NASCAR ranks, and also drove Porsches. He was rapid in the GT3 Benelux series a good few years ago. He's been a Belgian endurance champion twice, races in the 24-hour series, so he's done a lot of miles and enjoys racing at this level. Right, Stinus Longin and Nicolas Salins are our winners of race 1, and they're both in the pits with Gemma Scott.
Nicola, well, just let Stinus have a quick drink. Yeah. He deserves that. That was a mega performance, and I think that puts you on top of the championship now.
Yeah, I believe so, yes. We have done a great weekend so far. It has not been easy because the competition is very hard, very strong. The other car, the KTM, is also very performant, and we have both shown a good stint, and I think we have done our best, and we are happy with this performance.
Absolutely. Stinus, that was hard work, but you clearly pulled out a great margin. What a drive.
Yeah, it was really good. The car was good. Also, Nicolas' stint was very good. So that was the reason why I could control the race. But still, yeah, you have to, in a sprint race, you always have to push, and there can always something happen. So yeah, it was a tough race, but really happy that we won.
And right up to the very end you pushed. You could have probably backed off and finished a lap earlier.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't dare.
Congratulations. Well done to both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. See you.
He did back off a bit, I guess, because what was 14 seconds of an advantage was only 11.9, only 11.9 at flagfall, but saying he didn't dare back off, well, he got another lap out of it, so maximising his track time. Stinus Longin, Nicolas Salins are race 1 winners. Now, just a thought, has anybody done the double this year? Well, in terms of victories, the answer is only at Spa, Philip Sledecka and Stefan Rossina. So what does this do to the championship? It means now that Nicolas Salins and Stinus Longin are ahead, with Stefan Rossina falling back in that 3rd place. Of course, he is on a different number of points from his co-driver, Philip Sledecka. Then you've got Bert Longin and Peter Gulinks ahead of Kevin Wieder and Anders Fjordbach, with Aurelius Rustica and Michael Vergers next in the standings. Luca Piri is 7th, ahead of those that have done, if you like, occasional races. So, happy drivers from the top 3 overall, and Henri Hassad, then Michael Doppelmayr and Eli Earhart, plus Leonardo Guarini will be the podium ceremony in the AM contest, and we'll get to them very shortly. So the drivers now do make their way up the steps. The podium awaits, it is dressed, ready, and the teams, of course, with another race to come later on in the day. Thankfully, relatively little damage. So the fans watch on, ready for the podium, ready for the next on-track activity here, because there is not only GT2, there are GT3 cars, also Carrera Cup and the French Formula 4 and Vol Race, which is the Spanish series that includes drifting as well as track attack activities, and a wide variety of cars for that, and that will be coming up shortly on track. But the trophies will be presented first to the victorious drivers at the end of this opening race. So as soon as the drivers are all there, we can have the first podium for the Pro-Ams. So there, Henri Hassan arrives, looking pretty tired, but a really hard race that actually. There's Michael Doppelmayr, and in the sunglasses in the background, Eli Earhart, who yet again proved his pace in the opening stint of the race. The SRO officials making sure that all the right drivers are there, and then we can get the podium underway. So for our Pro-Am podium first up, or Am podium, we'll double check. I think it's normally the Pro-Ams that we have first. But the drivers being brought forward, and it will be Peter Gulinks and Bert Longin for 3rd in Pro-Am, who come forward first of all. So they make their way onto the podium. And then for 2nd place, Stefano Costatini and Luca Piri will come forward. And the top step of the podium, a 3rd victory of the season in Fanatec GT2 European Series. Nicolas Salins and Stinus Longin. The race winners step forward, make their way to the top step of the podium as the national anthem of the winning team is played. A winning margin of 11.9 seconds at the end of the race. A pretty dominant performance as Manuel Avino, the RFEDA president, steps forward to hand over the trophies, which in true SRO fashion have the circuit map as part of the trophy. There from Pirelli, Steve Rouse, Pirelli racing engineer, comes forward, and also the drivers making sure they've got the correct hats on. Stinus Longin trying to get away with it, but he's caught out. but he puts that with the bottle of champagne, trying to keep his sponsors happy, but he might get himself in a bit of finger wagging for that. But there, the trophies to the race winners, to Nicolas Salens, to Stinas Longin, and the trophies held aloft for photographs, handshakes all round, and a really good drive by Stinas Longin and Nicolas Salens. Now, bear in mind, they're going to get 10 seconds of success penalty going into the next race. They're not spraying the champagne because they need the overalls to be moderately dry for, what have they got, about 5 hours' time, that's all. So the drivers, in a moment, will make their way off the podium, and that will be given over to the Pro-Am drivers instead. So, as ever, the different classes looked after on the podium. So a happy Luca Piri makes his way off the podium. The fans now watching the Vol race high-performance cars on track. But in a moment, the podium will be the centre of attention once again. So for third in the Pro-Am contest, Leonardo Gorini steps forward. Then for second place, Eli Earhart and Michael Doppelmayr come forward. And Henri Hassad, the class winner once again. Michael Doppelmayr might only have finished second, but he's still very, very happy about that. And Henri Hassad, getting closer to being AM champion, stands on the top step of the podium now. So, congratulations to Henri Hassad, who takes the class win. Michael Doppelmayr and Eli Earhart second. As again, Manuel Avino, the RFEDA president, steps forward to give the third place trophy to Leonardo Gorini in that pseudo Rothmans liveried Porsche. Then to LP Racing Audi drivers, Eli Earhart and Michael Doppelmayr, the trophies for second place. And then the trophy will go the way of category winner and soon-to-be champion, I suspect, Henri Hassad, who takes the AM class win. And another excellent job done by Henri and LP Racing to secure a fifth win of the season. So the drivers pose for photographs and will then flee the podium in anticipation of race 2. Expect more celebrations, I suspect, at the end of the day. So well done to our AMs, to our Pro-Ams as well. And they vacate the podium here at the end of our first Fanatec GT2 European Series race. This is how the AM Championship looks. Henri Hassad getting clear of Gianluca Giorgi, not here this weekend. Leonardo Gorini third, ahead of Eli Earhart. Hubert Trunkenpolz and Klaus Angerhofer are next. Michael Doppelmayr sixth. He also had to miss one race at the Red Bull Ring. That's why he and Earhart are on a different number of points. So more to come from Fanatec GT2 European Series later in the day. So some good racing from our GT2 teams. More to look forward to later on in the day here at the Valencia circuit. Let's have a look at the highlights of what turned out to be a lively race. It began with Eli Earhart taking the advantage, getting the drop on the run down towards the first corner. Behind, the battles raged on, and Aurelius Rustica ran a little bit wide. There was more drama coming out of turns 2 and 3. Kevin Wieder's Brabham in the thick of it, and then there was contact as well as the KTMs got themselves together. Klaus Angerhofer and Hubert Trunkenpolz rather roughed up. More squabbling amongst the Audis. Henri Hassad trying to get himself onto the tail of Peter Gullings, who looked for a way past Kevin Wieder and had this spin coming out of turn 8. Gullings able to rejoin as the pit stop window opened, and the last to pit was the leading car as Eli Earhart finally gave way to co-driver Michael Doppelmayr. More drama amongst the KTMs, and again, number 17 now, Hubert Trunkenpoltz at the wheel on the receiving end. That car in the gravel, and Stefan Rossina given a drive-through for contact. On a charge, however, was Stinus Longin. He moved his way through into the race lead, got himself ahead of Doppelmayr, and continued to dominate from the front. More battles behind as Michael Berger squabbled with Henri Hassad, with Stefan Rossina, and they all got past Michael Doppelmayr, who in the end would have to settle for second in class. But up front, Stinus Longin and Nicolas Seeland on target for a race win. Their pit stop is under investigation. There might be a sting in the tail to this, but on track, time to celebrate win number 3 for Stinus Longin and Nicolas Seeland. Join us for race 2 later in the day. It's goodbye for now, though.